Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today at the Canadian Hydrogen Convention. Thank you for participating in our discussion on accelerating hydrogen deployment via collaboration between the UK and Canada. Thanks to everybody who's here, and thank you to everybody online. Please submit your questions, and we'll help get them answered over the next few minutes. Thank you to Edmonton Global and to DMG Events and every other organization that has participated in getting this event possible. We're facing a lot of geopolitical conditions right now. And for me, and I'm assuming for others, conferences, meetings, and events are a refreshing place to share ideas and start working together again. My name is Brenna Barlow. I work for the British High Commission here in Alberta. I'm based in Calgary. I work to advance the development of science and technology between the UK and Canada across multiple sectors. We work with private companies, with research institutions, with think tanks, with all levels of government to elevate all of that. And we do everything we can to connect and collaborate. And for my role, that means energy transition work and energy security work. I'm very fortunate today to have three experts with me. They have unique experience across multiple jurisdictions and multiple years. All three of these individuals and companies were introduced to me in different ways, but they do have three things in common, all three of them. They're all very ethical people. They all display ingenuity, and they all have a very good understanding of business operations, which is, I think, something that's very valuable in accelerated energy. So I'll start with Eddy. Eddy is the Senior Director of Sales and Business Development at Cavendish Hydrogen. Their main focus is accelerating hydrogen mobility and building global, sustainable, resilient infrastructure in hydrogen. Eddy develops hydrogen stations in the US, in Canada, the UK, and across Europe. Is that right? Yeah. Next is Adrian Anderson, who works for Arup. Adrian is Arup's hydrogen and industrial decarbonization lead. He's from the UK, and he's very graciously joined us as a, are you a resident? But you live here now in Alberta. They're an employee-owned company, a multidisciplinary engineering firm, and we're grateful to have Adrian here with us today. He's led Arup's work on the UK's largest industrial cluster plan and is now working on hydrogen deployment in Alberta. And finally, we have Emmet from Lagan Energy. Emmet has spent 20 years in the power and energy sectors as an electrical engineer. He leads Lagan's work on a number of hydrogen projects, the Long Mountain Hydrogen Project in Ireland and the UK, the Energia TransLink Hydrogen Refueling Project, and again, also has proven business experience in the industry. So we wanted to tap into a few different aspects of hydrogen. I was hoping to get input from all three of you. The first question I think I wanted to ask and see who wanted to answer was about what types of different business models work within hydrogen. What types of collaboration have worked, what hasn't worked, and what do you feel like would be best going forward?
I suppose I'll start quickly on that, Brenna, in saying that I think with hydrogen, everyone's can acknowledge that it doesn't work on its own, initially at least, but then no new technologies to the market does. It does require subsidies to get it off the ground and get it operational, at least for the early adoption projects. And so Canada has a fairly attractive scheme coming through with the tax credits, and that's good to see, but it's probably my input at that stage.
Yeah, just to add to that, Emmet, I think overcoming the chicken and egg problem of hydrogen needs all parts of the supply chain to move together. And yeah, it's great. It's great when the business models are designed to do just that, and when the planning and the kind of visioning is inclusive of all parts, whether it's production, storage, transportation, distribution, or end use across multiple sectors. Trying to get business models that will address that is absolutely key. And yeah, I think I'm really excited to be here in Canada at this time. And as you say, the ITCs have just come out last year, and seeing what that will mean, not just for the next 5 years, but for the next 20 years ahead.
Sodium. Okay. Yeah, for us, we actually most recently started in Canada, where we delivered the first station in the Vancouver area. We are a pure equipment OEM, so we are not having to set up a business here in Canada for the moment. However, this will become relevant so soon as we have some volume to it, and where we need to deploy some resources to actually assist during the operations of the station within service and maintenance. I'm sure we will run into multiple challenges by doing so. Already now, I can hear my colleagues in Denmark telling me that there are tax implications, both international tax implications and local, which we need to consider also by deploying our resources either from the US or Europe to Canada and vice versa. So for any company considering doing business from abroad into Canada, I strongly recommend looking into that before you set foot on the ground.
That makes sense, and leads very well into some of the next questions I want to ask. We are in a period of geopolitical uncertainty. It's very challenging out there right now. And I wanted to know if any of you have experienced any uncertainty or challenges related to supply chains or expertise chains or anything like that in the last few years.
I can take that. And so as Brenna said, I've moved from the UK to Canada last August, and we had just been through exactly the same period of run up to a big national election. So many decisions were waiting and pending, and there's this tension that builds up. And Canada's had the kind of double whammy now of the US followed, and the implications there, followed by just 4 or 5 days away. As we all know, the elephant in the room is the federal election here. But I think the phrase is never waste a good crisis, and actually what's happened south of the border has really united many Canadians across the provinces, and there's conversations, I'll say, going on that wouldn't have happened previously, interprovincial conversations, and I think hydrogen's got a role across the provinces, whether it is physical infrastructure or whether it's sharing of expertise or of kind of initiatives. So yeah, there is that sense of frustration. I'm sure we've all felt it in our different fields. Maybe love to hear from you guys on that one, but let's also not waste this moment because it's quite a interesting time.
Yeah, and I think I'd add to that as well, Adrian, that there is already existing evidence of supply chain collaboration between the UK and Canada. We've experienced it directly on some of the projects that we've been involved in. For example, the TransLink refueling station that we designed and built. The buses that's being fueled from that fuel station is owned by Wrightbus, but the fuel cells within that are actually Ballard fuel cells shipped from Canada. So we had the pleasure of going to the factory up in Burnaby, where we got to see the fuel cells on the production line as well. But there already is evidence, even within the hydrogen ecosystems there.
Yeah, from our side, I'm actually located south of the border. so obviously the political landscape is challenging at the moment. But the good thing is that our manufacturing facility is located in Denmark, and from there we are transporting the goods over to Canada. So we are pretty well settled there, but also here during the operations, it will definitely be the service and maintenance and associated supply chain on the spare parts. I don't have an answer yet for that, on how that will look like going forward in the future, but I'm sure we will overcome those and like I said before, potentially even set up local in Canada, so we can source the components also here or get them directly from Europe and have them in a warehouse located in Canada.
Have any of you experienced any expertise supply chain issues? Lack of expertise, trying to hire people, trying to find engineers, graduated students, or anything like that?
I mean, I can't reference that directly to Canada or the UK or Ireland either, Brenna, but I think as a whole sector, the hydrogen sector is definitely suffering from that in many areas, and it's just purely down to the infancy of that the sector's in at the minute. Talent acquisition from the leading supply chain and OEMs is rife, and that often delays in, actually results in delays in projects because maybe somebody that was a key part of that organisation has been headhunted, and all of a sudden the OEM's left with a black box. So it's getting better because the industry's expanding and it's becoming less reliant on individual and key people. But it's definitely a challenge, I think, suffered by at every level in the supply chain there.
That makes sense. I did want to talk about policy and regulation a little bit. I know it's a really challenging issue these days. It can be difficult to navigate in new jurisdictions, in developing sectors that are still scaling, so they're not quite established yet. Timelines, permitting, approvals, supply chains, regulations, all of these things can help or hinder a project. So I wanted to know, based on your project work, what are the aspects of the Canadian experience or international experience that has worked out well for this, and what are the challenges?
Yeah, I can take that. I'm not sure. Experience will have to see how well it's going to work. However, currently in Europe, for example, we are certifying our equipment according to CE. For the UK, I believe it's UKCA. For the US, we are working with UL. For Canada, we are working with CUL. However, they also have CRN. So this obviously brings some challenges to the board. We are trying to manufacture standardized products, and these are all COL certified, which could mean a national blanket certification for Canada. But the issues we are running into at the moment is really the CRN registration that is per province. And we hate to adjust our products in every province. We like standardized. We want to make it universal, and therefore, we are kind of hoping that this new COL certification we have on our equipment could be looked at from a national level, and hopefully help to implement that as a good alternative for CRN certification.
So to make it more succinct, meeting multiple types of regulations in a single jurisdiction, well, what could be a single jurisdiction, is very challenging when you're trying to move into a new market.
Yeah, exactly. We experienced the same in the US, where we had the local authority have a jurisdiction to certify our equipment or sign off on it. So we made the choice to make a blanket UL certification on the equipment. The main benefit for that is that all of a sudden the fire marshal that will come by and certify the equipment will see all that equipment as a black box. And that means that that's a check mark on the equipment, and he will just look at whatever has been implemented at the site in addition to the equipment. So in order to speed up the process within permitting, we definitely recommend going for a blanket approval, and preferably with UL.
Blanket and well-informed approvals, right?
Exactly.
Brendan, can I jump in briefly? Because I think just in terms of UK, Canada collaboration and having moved from working in this sector for the last 5 years in the UK and now 7 months with Arup on both sides of the Atlantic now, I think this is it's a huge area where the UK has got a lot to share in terms of the business models, the policy, the regulation, and it's not that we've got it all sorted out, but it's all there in English. It's all published. Arup through actually someone that we both know in our organization, leads a huge amount of work for our Department of Energy and Net Zero. As hydrogen technical advisor, so we're there kind of writing a lot of this stuff. It's all published, it's all in English, so it's available. I do just want to caveat that, especially to the Canadian audience here, is that the UK absolutely needs Canadian expertise. The other way, we are now looking at a build out of 100% hydrogen high pressure network, Project Union, which some of you may have heard of. It's about 13,000 kilometers of high pressure network, and we in the UK just haven't built that amount of pipe work anytime recently. So we need the Canadian practical expertise as well. So there's this definitely two-way collaboration, which I think is really timely. It's really timely having this conversation. There's a kind of two-way thing that's needed.
I think that's really interesting. Everything from manufacturing valves to pressure testing equipment to testing pipelines, we have that expertise in Alberta, and potentially there are more applications of it internationally.
I think actually, Brenna, your Minister Jean last night at the networking event made a really good point, and I couldn't agree with him more in that he said that it takes Canadians to travel globally to understand that when they come back, that the opportunity for hydrogen is much greater here than people actually realise. With the existing skill base and expertise in gases, now in gas, very easily transition across to a low carbon hydrogen there.
I agree. I think we have a massive opportunity here. If anybody else wants to comment, please go ahead. Adrian does.
I will just jump in with another example. Partly because my colleague Ross is here, who leads all our work on hydrogen for heat and the safety work that's really been demonstrated here in Edmonton with the show home. If you have a chance to go and see it, please do. That's ACCO's project. And I think whilst we maybe brought that expertise from the UK, looking at in depth at the the quantitative risk assessment and the safety work around that. Actually, what is being done here, I think, in terms of a new build, 15,000 properties, once that's operational, it'll be a world first, and it's something the whole world will be looking at to Edmonton. So, yeah, just one particular example where I think definitely there's two-way potential.
I agree. The next thing I wanted to go through was a little bit on energy transition and how different governments, different jurisdictions approach the different methods of creating hydrogen. And I know, I know you all have experience with it, so wanted to hear about how those experiences went and how you approach governments and markets.
Yeah, for us, I think where hydrogen comes from at the moment, we really don't care. So long as it's hydrogen that can be used, I think we need to do that in these early phases of development. It's still a very immature market, and therefore let's focus on the technology before we start to see how green we can get it. But we will get there, I'm sure. Besides that, there are different variables to consider. What kind of kilowatt hour price do you have in the area? Do you have existing production plants where you can tap into? I think the main goal is really to get the hydrogen to a fossil parity price, and wherever you can get that, I think you should go ahead and get that. Currently, we see hydrogen being transported cross country to provide fuel for the stations that are in operation. I'm hoping that could change and that local governments could look at that and maybe give some incentives to people that are actually manufacturing the hydrogen or producing the hydrogen and thereby providing it at hopefully fossil parity one day.
Yeah, I suppose on top of that, if we look at the global landscape on hydrogen and the strategies from national strategies from individual countries, Europe in particular is predominantly green hydrogen strategies, but UK and Canada, as an example, are both low carbon hydrogen strategies, which allow for blue and some of the lower intensity carbon hydrogens coming through. So there is definitely big synergies on that front in terms of technologies that can be used for that reason and supported at government level.
Wanted to spend just a few minutes talking about how your experiences were coming into the Canadian market. What things worked, what didn't work, if you were an investor or if you were a new company coming into the Canadian market, what things checked the boxes for you and made it work really well. Whether they be the market type, the regulation, the commercialization, incentives.
So our business in Lagan Energy Engineering is predominantly electrical engineering specialism in high voltage, but that brings us into two main markets really: data centers, which are very large energy consumers, and renewable generation portfolios such as wind, battery, etc. When we look to expand what we're currently doing in Europe, which is most of the mainland countries there, particularly in Sweden, and replicate that in North America, I think Canada is definitely more appealing. Even before the previous administration, Canada's laws and the incorporation of companies is very much reflected on similar processes in the UK. So it's much easier for us to incorporate here. We haven't actually done that yet, but it is our intention to do it very soon. We want to wait to see how things settle down after the new appointments. But that's definitely a big tick.
Yeah, from our side, I can only encourage local government or national government to implement a fuel credit that can be used by the operators of the hydrogen fueling stations. Without such credits, it's going to be very hard for these companies to survive and make this a success that we all want to be. So fuel credits for the operators.
So you're talking about incentives based on fuel crediting and compliance programs.
Yeah, and really to support the operator of a fueling station, you will see in this early phase of infrastructure rollout that the utilization is going to be very low. And thereby, that also means that the investments are going to be very high for the utilization that you in the first few years will have. In order to survive those first few years with those investments, it would be very beneficial to have some sort of fuel credit for the actual operator. In California, they have the HRI, the LCFS credits. I believe it's being incorporated in Canada as well.
British Columbia and federally.
I can only encourage to roll that out nationally. and then in addition to that, maybe found some additional incentives for these operators to be able to operate their fueling stations without significant losses.
Adrian, have you seen any of that?
I was thinking to some of the challenges, if that's okay, just back to your original question, coming into the Canadian market. I guess in the UK we have largely across the political spectrum, across society, appreciation of why net zero is important, why we have to get there, and the challenge I guess here is less buy-in completely across the spectrum. Maybe it's a bit of an earlier stage we're out with that, and yet it's coming. I feel like there's it's taking a bit longer perhaps, but yeah.
I have just one more question, and then I'm going to go open things up for some Q&A. You all get one answer, one bullet point. What is the biggest barrier to you developing your hydrogen technology right now? One sentence.
I would probably say stronger subsidies, although Canada is really doing very well there in terms of incentivizing new developers, international investors, stronger subsidies.
Adrian?
One sentence would be, the energy transition was never going to be easy. There was always going to be pushback, but we will get there. And hydrogen's a key niche of that, and quite a large niche in my experience, in my opinion, especially in places like Edmonton.
Eddy?
Well, I just want to echo what I already said. It's the fuel credit. It's the incentives for the operators to actually make this a success.
Thank you. I'm not sure if we have any online questions, but if there's any, we've got someone here. I think we have some mics moving around.
Thank you. What is the cheapest way of producing hydrogen? I mean, there are many processes, electrolytic processes, SMR, so many steps in that one. But going forward, what do you think will be the easiest way, cheapest way of producing hydrogen for a commercial purpose?
That's a good question. I don't think that any of us here has the detailed knowledge about that. It could also wildly differ from country to country or state to state and province to province. I think, just walking outside here, looking at the water you have here right in front of the door, there's a lot of hydropower. So if you can connect your electrolyzers to some hydropower, I think you are on the right track.
And I'd probably just add to that and saying hydrogen very much at the moment is a very case-by-case business model as to trying to make it work. And so certain conditions for a particular operator may mean that hydrogen is very viable. For example, maybe negative pricing in a certain market, if that's what that country's doing, or if there's really cheap electricity or abundance, then that really increases the business case. So it's very much case by case, I would say.
There's a great Hydrogen Council report I can point you to afterwards if that's helpful.
Please follow up with them. Thank you. Were there any other questions? Then we'll wrap up. Thank you to all three of you for being here. For traveling, for being here internationally. Please connect with everybody going forward, and thank you to everybody online for tuning in as well. Please send follow-ups and questions and emails to all of our panelists.